When you first set foot in a penguin colony, it is like stepping into a big city. They live in one of the most dangerous environments on Earth, Antarctica. For years I've been coming here with a team of scientists, hoping to uncover the secret lives of Adelie penguins.
Oh my God!
A whole chunk of that ice sheet just fell off. Look at the wave. Those penguins are gonna get swept away.
What we have actually discovered has implications for the entire planet. My name is Grant Ballard, and I've been researching Adelie penguins for 11 years. When I'm not in Antarctica, I live in San Francisco with my wife and fellow researcher, Viola Toniolo. We're the latest generation in a long line of scientists who study penguins. The amount of data that's been collected is mind-boggling. The trick is making sense of it all.
And then this thing broke off.
But one fact is already clear.
In the past 15 years, we've lost how many square kilometers of ice shelf?
I don't know,
A lot.
Things are changing quickly in Antarctica.
Cape Bird, where the populations were really increasing relative to...
During the 1980s, aerial photographs revealed a big spike in certain Adelie penguin populations. No one knew why.
The ice edge was about 5...
Was it triggered by a natural phenomenon? That question was the beginning of a journey that would take us to the bottom of the world and offer a troubling vision of the future. This year, I'm making my way to Penguin City by way of New York City.
This is a nice place.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm here to pick up a high-tech gadget for monitoring penguins. My friend Nat, an engineer, has been improving our weighbridge, a smart scale that measures how much food adult penguins are bringing to their chicks.
In a card this size, we can store actually several seasons worth of data, and then when you want to collect it, you can just pop the card out.
Well, that's ideal. That's really great.
With all these sophisticated surveillance machines, sometimes I feel more like 007 than a marine biologist.
I'm very excited about that. It's going to save me so much time.
Good luck.
Next up, Antarctica.
For explorers of the past, that meant a 5-month voyage across treacherous seas. Today, the route to Antarctica is a little less taxing, though it still feels like an endurance test. After crossing the Pacific Ocean to New Zealand, our scientific team takes a military jet to Antarctica. About 24 grueling flight hours in all. Our destination is a science base in southern Antarctica, Komodo Station. It sits on the edge of a glacier that's bigger than California. We touch down on a landing strip of sea ice 8 feet thick. Finally, we're 78 degrees south, in what is perhaps the last pristine marine environment on Earth.
Here we are, the Great White South.
Made it! Welcome back! We spend a few days at McMurdo preparing for the harsh life in the field. No one here has more experience with that than our team leader, David Ainley. He's been coming to Antarctica since 1968. This season, we're also joined by a couple of newcomers, French researchers, Valère Marcedon and Amélie Lescroel. There's no grocery store where we're headed, so we stock up with 3 months' worth of supplies.
When everything's set, the team divides into 3 groups. Each heads to one of the 3 penguin colonies on Ross Island. While David makes his way to Cape Royds, Viola and I, with Amélie and Valère, are bound for Cape Crozier. Later in the season, we'll visit a 4th colony on Beaufort Island. Altogether, these sites form a metapopulation, more than 500,000 loosely related penguins. How their populations are shifting and why is the focus of our study. It's October, and down here, in the topsy-turvy world of the Southern Hemisphere, that means spring. And 24 hours of daylight. The wind and warming sun break up some of the sea ice that encircles Antarctica in the winter. Marine animals surge into the newly opened waters looking for food. And nearly 10% of all Adelie penguins find their way back to Ross Island, their southernmost breeding site.
When you first get here, you're overwhelmed with the size of it. You know, there's just so many penguins. You know, the fact that they're bipedal, they walk on 2 feet just like humans, it sort of looks like a big city full of little people in a way.
When they walk, they look a little awkward. They're much more graceful in the water, their true home. Most of the year, these penguins live 1,000 miles from here, swimming between the free-floating chunks of sea ice known as pack ice. But at Cape Crozier, the penguins have to deal with fast ice, a solid shelf of sea ice attached to land. There's no swimming here, which is tough on Adelies. They have to do the last several miles to the colony on foot. The first to arrive are the established breeders, somewhere between 5 and 15 years old.
Your first impression is, wow, look at all those crowds of creatures that are walking around doing stuff. What are they doing? And they're always very busy.
After a winter apart, penguin pairs reunite. Penguins aren't strictly monogamous, but if they've had good luck with a partner in the past, they usually hook up with that bird again. They look for each other at last year's breeding sites. Then they mate and rebuild their summer nests.
In the early season, they're getting to know their mate, and they spend a lot of time courting and making their nests pretty and secure for the eggs that will be coming along.
Adelie penguins are choosy when it comes to breeding grounds. On the entire continent, only a few places meet their needs. Beaches that are free of snow and ice, but rich in the essential material for nest making, rocks. The penguin pebble connection was noted by Dr. William Sladen, who has been studying these penguins for 50 years. Bill's kind of a rock star among penguin researchers. He was the first person to describe the life cycle of a penguin, from chick to breeder to 20-year-old elder. He documented so much so well that younger researchers like me sometimes feel like there's nothing new to discover. If Bill and his students did the big picture work, today we're focusing on the individual lives of penguins. Both aspects are needed to understand the complex changes happening in Penguin City.
Just like Bill Sladen did so many years ago, Grant and I pitch our tent on the mountainside about a mile above the colony. The research hut serves as our kitchen and office. When the weather gets ugly, we also sleep in here, which can get a little crowded.
Mac Ops, this is Cape Crozier calling for our daily check-in.
With 11 years at Crozier under his belt, Grant is a veteran. I've been coming here for the last 5 years. First-timers Valère and Amélie are learning about the technology that we use to study penguins.
You got everything?
Yep. Even to a biologist, one penguin looks pretty much like another. We place stainless steel numbered flipper bands on the birds to help us identify individuals.
So Valère is doing what we do most of the time we are in Antarctica, which is searching for banded penguins. It's a little bit like looking for a needle in a haystack, so spend a lot of hours just sort of wandering around.
We also link each bird to its nest with a nest marker. Between nest markers and flipper bands, we can track specific birds within the group over time. This season, we plan to add another 1,000 birds to the 10,000 which we have banded in previous years. Throughout their lives, we'll monitor where they go, who they're with, and how successful they are.
I see a banded bird right here, so I'm going to get its band number, 44436.
44436, we've nicknamed her Roxanne, is an experienced 10-year-old female that we know from past seasons. She and her previous mate reared lots of healthy chicks together. Last year, her mate disappeared, and she had to abandon her nest, but she didn't give up. This year, Roxanne has a new mate and eggs.
Penguins are amazingly resilient. Their ability to adapt can serve them well when things go wrong. But not always. Because we came to Antarctica to study a large population spike, we wanted to know what might have caused fluctuations in the past. One clue seemed to be lying right at our feet. Inside the colony lie traces of a distant catastrophe, a field of penguin mummies.
In this particular case, the dead penguins that are all around me are mostly from a single event that happened probably about between 200 and 300 years ago.
When we started our study 11 years ago, this bizarre site struck us as important. Maybe this disaster, frozen in time, held a clue to other dramatic population fluctuations in the past. What could have caused such a massive die-off? Our team leader, David Ainley, proposed that a giant iceberg might have blocked access from the breeding beach to food in the open water. Another colleague suggested that a freak snowstorm could have buried the penguins alive. At the time, neither idea seemed plausible. After all, in a century of scientific research in Antarctica, no one had ever witnessed either of those events.
Sometimes you just have to see something to understand it. That's true for penguins too. Juvenile penguins act a little like tourists their first couple of years in a colony.
We call these guys gapers. They look like they might be seeing the big city for the first time or something, and they're just like, oh my God.
Want a pebble? In fact, they'll often visit several colonies before settling down to breed. The ones that are not breeding are up to no good, and sometimes they follow you, and they're very curious creatures. These young penguins have a lot to learn. Inexperienced birds explore the colony looking for a spot of their own. What they often find instead is trouble. To succeed in the big city, young birds, like young people, need to learn the language. And that includes the right calls and gestures. There's a couple of territorial displays. There is the sideways stare, like... and then they put their head sideways and point the bill towards the flipper. It's signifying annoyance at the approach of an intruder. The growl. So we get growled at a lot. Sometimes they attack us.
A healthy Adelie weighs about 10 pounds, but breeding pairs have been fasting since coming ashore in late October. In the last 3 weeks, they've lost up to a quarter of their weight. It's mid-November now, and at last it's time to eat. Roxanne and the other females go first, leaving the future fathers with incubation duties for the next 10 to 12 days.
We found a pair, and they switched places, and we know for sure that it's about to leave the colony to go find some food. This changing of the guard gives us the perfect opportunity to attach a splash tag to a breeder and discover her hunting habits. Penguins are strong, and they bite. To tag one, you have to grab it quickly and with authority. Okay, put it a little lower.
No matter what the birds think, we are extremely careful.
Raise a layer of feathers.
Only skilled scientists who are properly trained and permitted can pick up a penguin.
And so it's one even shelf. Like a tiny waterproof computer, the splash tag transmits the location of the penguin as she hunts. Every day, we get an email from each bird telling us where it is in the Ross Sea. Another part of the tag stores the time and depth of their dives. We also know the temperature of the water they're diving into. When we put all this information together, we get a picture of what it's like for penguins any given day of the year to find food to bring back to their chicks. This recorded information can only be retrieved when the splash tags are removed.
We know that food supply affects a colony's size, which can range from just a few hundred to hundreds of thousands of birds. At 130,000 breeding pairs, the Cape Crozier colony is one of the largest in the world, which suggests that food is readily available here. Our research will give us the hard data to confirm or refute that theory.
Tagged and tagless, several thousand strong, the breeding females march across the frozen sea that still surrounds Cape Crozier. Even though they're hungry, they hesitate at the ice edge. No one wants to go first. For good reason. Cunning leopard seals are waiting for them. In open water, penguins can outswim them no problem. It's getting in and out that's risky.
It looks terrible. It's very dramatic when you see it. But a lot of times, if you watch really carefully, the penguin actually gets away.
Back in the colony, the males keep a vigilant watch over their incubating eggs. Their number one worry? Skuas. Predatory seabirds that also nest in the rocks at Cape Crozier. They're a bit like gulls, only bigger and stronger. Their primary diet is fish, but skuas eat penguin eggs and chicks as well. Talented thieves, they gang up on incubating adults whose nest sites are isolated and vulnerable. It looks cruel, but skuas need to eat too. That's just life in Penguin City, the kind of threat these animals have been coping with for 3 million years. Far more frightening is when something entirely new confronts them. Nothing could have prepared any of us for the spring of 2000. That was the year the world's largest glacier, the Ross Ice Shelf, spawned the world's largest iceberg. Dubbed B15 by glaciologists, it was the 15th glacier to break away from the ice shelf in the Antarctic's B, or Pacific Quadrant.
We knew it was coming because you could see it in the satellite imagery. We started seeing this white wall on the horizon, and every day it got closer and closer.
pushed all the smaller icebergs
in front of it like a big bulldozer.
Yeah. It's like a ring of icebergs.
Yeah, and the penguins had to figure out how to come in, and we thought, well, maybe there won't be any penguins.
When it grounded off Ross Island, B-15 created a massive ice jam. It posed a serious threat to the colony. More amazing, it was the very scenario that marine biologist David Ainley had proposed to explain the penguin mummy field. An improbable event had come to life right before our eyes.
Unbelievably, they found their way through various little pathways and climbing 100 feet up into the air to get over these icebergs. A lot of parents just said forget it because they had to work so much harder to get through all that ice, to get out to the water to get their food.
For 5 years, Cape Crozier's penguins were forced to work harder and travel farther to find food. They survived, but many of their chicks never gained the weight they needed to make it through their first year. During the B-15 years, Ross Island's chick population declined by nearly 50%. That's about 100,000 fewer chicks per year. For some colonies, an unsustainable level. Fortunately, icebergs seldom stay in one place forever. In 2006, the pounding surf dislodged B-15. At the whim of the waves, it floated away. The Adelie penguins once again had access to the sea and their prey.
This season, we can see the population recovering. At the end of November, after more than a week feeding in the pack ice, the females make their way back to the colony. Relief is finally in sight for the dirty, hungry males.
There's thousands of female Adelie penguins coming in to give their male counterparts a chance to go out and get food. I always like the incubation shift. The males are probably pretty hungry, but they're also really happy to see their mate, and the female is really happy that the mate's still here and the eggs are still here.
Roxanne has just returned to her nest site too. Her mate hasn't eaten in a month. Yet, he doesn't dash off as soon as Roxanne arrives. He spends a few hours with her carrying rocks, improving their nest. It's a relatively easy time for them. The eggs are less work than the chicks will be.
So far this season, the Ross Island birds have faced conventional dangers, ones they know how to deal with. But back in the summer of 2001, we started hearing about another breeding colony whose troubles were totally unprecedented. It was more than 600 miles away, near the French research station at Point Géologie. The birds were distant cousins of the Adelies, the emperor penguins. Standing nearly 4 feet tall and weighing in at 75 pounds, they dwarf the Adelies. But a more important distinction is the way the birds breed. Emperors don't nest on dry land like Adelies, but on the fast ice itself. By the end of the 1990s, the bottom began falling out of their breeding grounds, literally. The ice was thinning and being swept away by strong winds, carrying eggs and chicks with it. The scientists realized that this surface, which had remained frozen since time out of memory, was thinning. It was a stunning wake-up call to a new reality: the impact of global warming in Antarctica. The concept cast a whole new light on B-15. Mega icebergs like B-15 occur naturally, perhaps twice in 100 years. But glaciologists think that the process is speeding up as our planet warms. For the first time, we began to suspect that climate change was the key to swings in Adelie penguin populations. The revelation took our research to a completely different level. It's all about the ice, really. In both the Arctic and Antarctic, vast expanses of ice act like a giant mirror. They reflect large amounts of the sun's energy back into space and help regulate the temperature of the entire planet. But as the Earth warms, the ice melts. What's left behind is the dark surface of the ocean. It doesn't reflect the sun's energy, it absorbs it. It's a feedback loop that gets bigger, faster, and warmer all the time.
For the Earth to actually warm up even a few degrees Celsius is a really big deal. It changes the way weather patterns work all around the Earth. And what we're seeing here is some of those changes happening really fast.
Because warm air masses carry more water, one of the driest places on Earth is now measurably moister.
To me, like, what's striking the most is that we're getting more storms with a lot of snow in them.
In December, we're assaulted by an unusually strong storm with winds topping 100 miles per hour. It shreds our mountain tents. It's worse for Roxanne and her neighbors. Snow piles high in their section of the colony. 3 feet of snow when you're barely 2 feet tall can be a real challenge.
Their instinct is to stay on the nest, which works if it's only about a foot of snow. But once it gets to be like a meter of snow, they can't really get out that easily, and in fact, it buries them.
The raging storm keeps us hut-bound on and off for 5 days. Roxanne saves herself and her eggs by chewing air holes and an exit out of the drifting snow. Most of the colony has not been hit as hard, and casualties are light. But that's not always the case.
This snowfield that I'm walking across is a result of a single storm in 2001, and it buried thousands of penguins that were incubating their eggs.
Like B-15, it's another event unimaginable just a decade ago.
These dead adults here just emerged from the snowfield that's melting right now. This was so much snow all at once that it literally buried them alive, and they froze on the nest. They haven't needed to evolve the instinct to actually abandon the nest because this kind of situation is so unusual.
The recent storm isn't all bad. Its fierce winds have broken up the sheet of ice in front of Penguin City, giving the birds easier access to their food. And just in time. The colony is quickly becoming a giant nursery. Roxanne and her mate now have 2 new mouths to feed. They must make shorter and more frequent fishing trips. Luckily, by breaking up the fast ice, the storm has brought their hunting grounds to them. Free-floating sea ice is a haven for small fish and shrimp like krill, the main prey of penguins.
To see how much food the parents are delivering to their chicks, we've set up the weigh station that I picked up in New York. It starts with a quick procedure, the same one used on household pets.
We select a group of penguins and harmlessly inject them with a microchip. Each time one of these parents leaves the colony to forage at sea, the weighbridge identifies them and records their weight.
So first I turn on the weighbridge.
A computer in a nearby tent stores the data.
There's the reader.
When the penguin returns from its feeding trip with a belly full of food, its weight is taken again. This one gained 3 pounds since she left the colony. She must have found some good hunting.
This year at Cape Crozier, the chicks are thriving. Like a lot of city kids, Roxanne's young grow up in a hurry. Though they're not yet ready to face dangers at sea, land predators are much less of a threat now.
Chicks are at an age where they're big enough that they can take care of themselves pretty well. A skua can't come in and pull them out because they weigh so much.
By mid-January, late summer in the Antarctic, the chicks can be left on their own. Both parents work full-time foraging at sea. While their parents hunt for 2 or 3 days at a stretch, the young huddle in groups called creches, waiting for their next meal. The arrival of an adult sparks what we call a feeding chase.
The parent is trying to make sure that he's feeding his own chick or her own chick rather than someone else's. So it just gives them a chance to sort of take a look at what's going on, how many chicks are actually chasing him around, and listen for their voices because they're bonded on voice recognition more than visual. All the chicks in the whole creche will start chasing any parent that comes in because they're hoping that it'll feed them too.
Thanks to the powerful storm, there's plenty to go around. The parents have easy access to lots of open water. It seems that some aspects of global warming have actually been good for the Adelies. By breaking up the fast ice which clings to Antarctica's shore, it gives better access to breeding beaches. It also creates more pack ice, the free-floating sea ice that Adelies use as a hunting platform. We're seeing this at Cape Crozier and Cape Bird, and it's especially true in the small colony at Cape Royds, where our team leader, David Ainley, works.
This colony has been growing over the past 30 years. For most of the 1900s, it stayed around the same size, and now it's well over 4,000 pairs.
In 3 decades, the Cape Royds colony has grown 300%. At the same time, rapidly warming temperatures are having the opposite effect on Adelie penguins up north, along the Antarctic Peninsula. The Antarctic Peninsula is heating up fast, about 9 degrees in just the last 50 years. That's faster than anywhere else on the planet. Perhaps nothing illustrates how stunning this shift is better than an event spawned by the exceptionally warm summer of 2002. The Larsen Ice Shelf, a 12,000-year-old sheet of frozen fresh water the size of Rhode Island, disintegrated in just 3 days. Throughout the region, sea ice is dissolving like ice cubes in a cup of tea. As it disappears, so do the once flourishing colonies of Adelie penguins.
Well, the thing about penguins is that their response is immediate. The sea ice disappears, the penguin disappears.
So is global warming positive or negative for the birds? The seeming contradiction has caught the attention of one of America's most respected biologists, the man who pioneered penguin research here, Dr. William Sladen. At 86, Sladen is returning to the penguin colony that he originally studied in 1959. He comes at the invitation of his former student, David Ainley.
Dave, I thought that you might like some emperor penguin eggs.
All right.
Sladen is the real deal and a real character.
Wow, mangoes.
This is a 1940 issue from Falkland Islands Dependency Survey. It's a string vest, which we used for sledging. It produces a nice little warm spot in your skin. There.
Ooh, nice.
Great.
Well, Bill Sladen began his work on penguins in 1947 in the northern part of the Antarctic Peninsula. The Adelie penguin colonies that he studied are in dramatic decline.
So are you weighing these birds at the moment?
Yeah.
Supposing a bird wants to come here and go down to the sea.
Well, it's got to go across the scale first.
Fantastic. Here's a bird coming in from the sea, right fresh, glossy plumage. Hi there.
Since Sladen was last here, average winter temperatures have risen more than 5 degrees Fahrenheit, and the penguin population has tripled. He knows those shifts are related.
These Adelie penguins are indicators because they live in the pack ice, and the pack ice is diminishing up in the Antarctic Peninsula, and it's increasing down here.
Here you go.
I've never done this. Penguin, just remain quiet for a little bit more. This work on the Adelie penguin is one of the longest studies of a seabird that we know, and it's very, very important to establish long-term studies.
In Bill Sladen's lifetime, entire colonies of Adelie penguins have disappeared. In the next decade, it's believed the species will be altogether gone from the northern end of the Antarctic Peninsula.
Climate change is complex, and Adelie penguins are showing how complex it actually is.
The very thing wreaking havoc in northern Antarctica creates opportunities in the south. No colony has done better than the one on Beaufort Island. 50 miles from Cape Crozier, it is a volcanic outcrop in the Ross Sea and home to one of Antarctica's fastest growing penguin cities. It's not easy to get to, so the research team only goes there once a year. In late January, we board a U.S. Coast Guard icebreaker. It'd be faster to fly, but over frigid open water, more dangerous too. We travel all night to get to the island.
Oh my god, that is amazing.
While most of the ship's crew sleeps, Viola and I watch the show off the bow.
I know, it's really pretty.
Two of Antarctica's biggest predators, minke whales and killer whales, take advantage of the channel to explore new hunting grounds. By morning, Beaufort Island, the latest favorite haven of Adelie penguins, is in sight. For transport to the island, we're required to wear polar safety gear.
This is a dry suit.
These watertight suits will protect us from an unexpected plunge into the Ross Sea, where temperatures hover just above freezing.
I think I'm gonna bake in here.
Something is really weird here.
If we can ever get them on.
Should I go all the way? Getting a little hot.
They're gonna put the boats in the water, and then we're gonna storm the beach, and the penguins won't stand a chance.
Heads up!
Beaufort wasn't always so hospitable, but in recent seasons, warmer temperatures and increased winds have dispersed its heavy winter sea ice, and the island's glaciers and snowfields are melting too. David Ainley believes that's why this colony is growing.
A decade ago, this colony was totally hemmed in by either precipitous cliffs or snow. This snow has been receding because of the warmer temperatures. So now this colony has the room to expand.
But it also has limits. We want to know if it can accommodate the population boom sparked by global warming that's currently underway in the Ross Sea.
Catch the fast ones.
To find out, we're putting flipper bands on 400 of its newest residents, the fledglings. Some U.S. Coast Guard officers have volunteered to help us get the job done.
There's so much feathers flying that it gets in your face and it tickles.
The chicks are molting, shedding their downy coats and showing adult feathers designed for the sea. The molted ones are squirmers.
Pretty far along. They've got big flippers. You ready to be weighed?
After the chicks are banded, measured, and weighed, they become lifetime members of an exclusive club.
One more group.
Dave's using advanced technique over there.
We will monitor these chicks, along with 2,400 others banded at other colonies this season, to see where they end up next year. Already, we've seen penguins banded here in previous seasons resettle elsewhere in the Ross Sea.
Some of that is normal, but much of it is due to changes in their breeding and feeding grounds triggered by global warming.
There we go. He's ready for action. We're claiming we're done.
Our operation in Beaufort complete, the team breaks up once more to finish work on Ross Island. Viola and I head back to Cape Crozier. Early February brings our 3 months at Cape Crozier to a close. Viola and I need to retrieve our last splash tag and the data it holds.
We have radio transmitters attached to the penguin, and if the penguin is at the surface and it's close enough, we can hear it. You see these penguins leaving the beach, and they just head out into the blue, and you have no idea what they're doing, where they're going, and you can guess, but without these satellite transmitters, you have no idea. Now this bird's close. Here. Just arrived.
Yeah, it's somewhere. It's coming across the snow probably.
Over there.
I really want a submarine. That'd be cool. We could chase them underwater. But I think the satellite transmitters probably cost a little less than the submarine.
We will spend the rest of the year analyzing our data, looking for clues to how penguins are responding to a quickly changing environment.
There he goes.
We're down to the last small tasks.
Okay, time to weigh him.
2775.
2775.
5 years from now, we'll probably have a huge population of breeding penguins here, because that's when these guys will come back.
That would be really cool to see.
While her 2 chicks are somewhere in this creche, Roxanne and her mate are nowhere to be found.
And I wasn't really expecting to find them, but sometimes you get lucky and you're here at the same time that they are, but they're spending very little time here.
Having reared big and healthy young penguins, adults like Roxanne and her mate have accomplished their mission. It's time for them to part company.
Which is a little sad. Another season ending for me and for them. But I'll see these guys again, and they'll probably be in the same nest, and I'll watch them raise their chicks again next year.
That's it?
That's it.
We're done?
We're finished.
All right.
We did 50 chicks, and they're all big.
Yeah.
None was less than 1 kilo, and most of them were more than 2 kilos.
And we're covered in guano, and it's kind of messy.
It's time for us to leave. And the chicks, too. Just 2 months old, they must take the big plunge. They have never touched the water, let alone hunted for food. Instinct compels them into the sea. If the chicks overcome their fear and the many obstacles facing them, they will return someday to Penguin City.
It's really exciting, stage because it's like a major transition. Up until now they've been under the constant watchful eye of their parents and, really carefully brooded and guarded and kept cozy. And now they're learning to rely on each other a little bit, and on a hot day, they're really, oh my God.
Oh,
amazing.
Wow.
A whole chunk of that
was
ice sheet just
huge
fell off.
piece.
Look at the wave coming along the coastline. Those penguins are gonna get swept away.
Oh my God. All those chicks.
It is days like this where you're going, things seem to be kind of changing. You're like, wow. And it literally is right before your eyes.
Penguins can adapt to a lot. In just 10 years, we've seen them deal with major declines in their more northern breeding grounds and sudden cataclysmic events, from massive icebergs to freak snowstorms. Global warming is impacting the penguins first, but it will not stop with them.
I think it's important to understand how these changes will affect human beings.
Antarctica contains about 90% of the world's freshwater, but it's all in the form of ice. This fresh water is going to be melting and adding to the ocean. The ocean sea level's going to be rising. While the penguins are coping with these changes, humans are also going to have to be coping with the very same changes.
In their precarious present, we can see the outline of our own uncertain future. I'm an optimist. I have to be. I just get up every morning and do the science. But I can't help wondering, when global warming causes these kinds of changes in human cities, and it will we adapt as well as the penguins?